This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Amentum. On this edition of FedGov Today, building a firm foundation for your cyber solutions. The Pentagon CIO's 4 pillars for mission delivery and building the Pentagon cyber workforce from the ground up. CIO Kirsten Davies is here. Welcome to FedGov Today in Washington, D.C. and around the world on the American Forces Network. I'm Francis Rose. The latest National Security Presidential Memorandum focuses on the most sensitive networks in the military and intelligence community. One provision of the memo reestablishes the Committee on National Security Systems. Jill Brunning is Chief Technology Officer at Amentum. Jill, welcome. It's great to have you on the program. This is just one example of how the government is changing the way that it does business because of AI. What else are you seeing as far as agencies delivering on mission? How are they changing what they're doing?
Well, certainly AI is a powerful technology, and we are seeing lots of changes in how that impacts work. For example, in enterprise information technology, it's really taking it from a more reactive to a proactive stance. And for cybersecurity as well, you have to have AI to be able to handle the volume of the cyber threat and the telemetry data that's being generated. I think for the workforce, we're starting to see what the impact is to individuals having more data at their fingertips. It's making them smarter in real time. And it's also helping to automate, taking some of that manual work off of their plates. And so we're seeing a little bit of excitement around that. So the important part is making sure we're not taking the people out of the loop. We're keeping the human in the lead.
Reactive to proactive. What's necessary from an infrastructure perspective to be able to make that pivot? It sounds like a pretty important pivot.
Sure, you have to have a secure digital foundation, especially in cybersecurity. You have to know what devices you have, what assets you have, what tools you have, what data. And so being able to build that secure foundation is essential to making sure that works.
How fluid does that ability to collect that information have to be, given how fluid the information itself is? New data all the time, avalanche of stuff, architecture changing, and so on.
It's certainly not stagnant. And I think one of the things is about having sort of that right size AI. You need to make sure you have the guardrails, the processes, and the governance to continue to execute and manage as things change and are fluid.
I like that term, right size AI, especially in an environment where people are tempted to apply AI potentially to everything that they might be able to put their hands on. How does one know that one has right-sized one's AI posture?
Well, right AI means about bringing the right tool in the right environment with the right cybersecurity. But it also, is centered around that strong governance that's essential, the right guardrails. And then it's about, right size also means staying away maybe from the extremes of, no, just turn it off, or let's transform the whole enterprise if we don't have the readiness intact to be able to do that. So right size is really about making sure AI gives you the best value and outcomes.
A lot of discussion around zero trust. We'll mention it in just a few minutes with Ms. Davies from the Pentagon. What does zero trust look like in the context of an AI world? Because when zero trust first became something that Pentagon was driving toward, civilian agencies were driving toward a couple of years ago, AI wasn't really part of the discussion at that point.
No, I mean, the critical part is still the digital foundation elements of cyber, making sure you have that strong digital foundation stacked. And then, zero trust is not a product. It's an operational model. And so that secure stack sort of gives you that foundation. But the resilience is what matters.
We have about a minute left. What have you seen as far as agencies finally starting to get out of the compliance game and really evaluating whether their networks are safer today than they were yesterday and so on?
We definitely have to have compliance. You got to check all the boxes. But to be able to ensure it's not really compliance versus resilience, it's making sure that the compliance and the resilience work together to achieve the mission outcomes.
What are the successful ways that you've seen that work? Because for a long time, the school of thought was that those two things were at odds with each other.
I think the thing that we see is really taking a more disciplined systems engineering approach. Not all systems are monolithic, and so you have to apply the right adoptions to get the mission outcomes.
Jill, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
You can read more about everything Jill and I talked about on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the Pentagon CIO's 4 pillars for mission delivery. CIO Kirsten Davies is here next when FedGov Today continues in a moment.
Innovation doesn't wait, and neither do we. At Maximus, we solve problems, streamlining operations, delivering solutions at speed and scale that drive measurable results. From strategy to execution, we simplify complexity, building trust through expertise and innovative technology. Every service, every time. Efficient government delivered. We don't follow innovation. We drive it. Maximus.
All the conversations we are having around AI should go from theory to practice. And what that actually means is having a set of principles that actually will not prevent AI from doing something incorrect, which is the biggest fear. It is how you design the system and the architecture that's actually going to prevent AI from making those mistakes.
What is the real outcome of AI? Do you use AI just for the sake of AI? Or do you use AI because you have a need, gap, or an opportunity for improvement? And the appropriate AI can really fill the need, the gap, or create the opportunity for the next level of performance.
Welcome back. 4 pillars make up the new Pentagon Chief Information Officer's strategy to drive transformation for the department. Those pillars include the Enduring Digital Foundation, agile digital capabilities, cybersecurity for the warfighting ecosystem, and skills and partnerships. Kirsten Davies is the CIO at the Pentagon. Welcome, Kirsten. It's great to see you. You rolled these out a couple of weeks ago at AFCEA's TechNet Cyber, kind of the coming out for a lot of Pentagon CIOs. Before we talk about each of these individually, how did you evaluate the whole landscape coming into the department to determine that these were going to be your 4 focus areas?
Thanks, Francis. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. You know, this is part of what we do in industry. When we go into a job for the first time, we kind of take the first 90 days to take a look around. You read a lot of reports. You talk to a lot of different people, and boy, did I have a lot of people to talk to. So what we kind of circled around was the need for some foundational capabilities, and also at the same time doing some leapfrog advancements. So this is how we develop those 4 pillars.
First one's the Enduring Digital Foundation. The concepts of it sound similar to what I've heard people in the office do before, but you're laying this out for a new age, basically, for the AI age. How's this different than what you've done in the past, and what are the fundamentals here?
Yeah, that's right. You know, network, transport, availability are all huge components of this. We go from undersea to celestial capabilities, and having operational resilience and transport resilience across that is fundamental. Also, data centers, and where we have our data centers, where the availability is, and supporting the AI arsenal. So we need more compute, we need more transport, and that's a lot of what that focuses on, is the capability set that's needed underneath that to underpin everything.
I imagine a lot of that is the location of the compute, not just the type of compute. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's right. Although type of compute does become important in the world of AI, so that is something that we're also expanding into. So it's just not traditional data storage and data compute that we've had across servers and laptops and things like that. It's actually how do we power this next generation of getting data supremacy and decision dominance straight out to the warfighters themselves, and that does require a different kind of compute. It also requires more capacity, more storage, more computational capability, as well as the transportation layers themselves. So when you think about where our warfighters are, you know, we're sitting here in the DC area, and our warfighters are everywhere around the world. And the resiliency of those nodes and that transport capability, and also the partnerships that we have across our allies and partners. It's crucial that we get that right from an efficiency, effectiveness, and a resiliency perspective.
Whether you're drawing on your industry experience or your Pentagon experience, how different is that infrastructure for that foundation now because of AI, because of data and the flow of data than it was, say, 2 years ago or 5 years ago, Kirsten?
That's a great question. You know, President Trump has given us a tremendous mandate for change, and he also, along with the Secretary, wants us to dominate in technology, in AI, and in cybersecurity. So it fundamentally needs to look different than it did 5 years ago. So what does that drive us towards? Again, the advent of frontier models for AI, driving a different type of compute, a vastness of compute that's needed. We also, it's no secret, it's not classified, we have a lot of legacy technology across the department, and we're aggressively getting after modernization, not only of servers and capacity and capability, but also across the application layers, the data itself as well. It's vast. It is much more broad than anything I've ever worked on in industry, and I've been at some of the largest shops in industry. It's a great challenge, and it's a wonderful time to be a part of this change.
You talked about tech debt at TechNet Cyber. A lot of techs there for me to mix up. And you said in the budget request you've got $1 billion for retiring tech debt. How do you prioritize that much legacy when you potentially have that much money to apply to it?
Yeah, I think historically speaking, we've looked at it from a dollars and cents perspective. So where are the largest platforms that are the most costly and carry the largest acquisition piece? And that's important, don't get me wrong. However, when we look at it through the lens of cybersecurity as well, we need to be prioritizing from a risk-based approach. Where do we have legacy platforms that are hosted by systems that are no longer in service? They're out of service, right? Out of date, can't be patched, things like that. So now what we're doing is we're taking a much more risk prioritized approach to it. So yes, getting after dollars and cents, because that's still important from a taxpayer money perspective, but also looking at it from an attack surface perspective too, and seeing where we can sunset things more rapidly.
The connection from the digital foundation to agile digital capabilities is pretty obvious. That's the second pillar of your strategy. And you said something that I like that you said was agile does not mean fast waterfall. Why does that, do you think, still important to emphasize in 2026?
I think, you know what, it always gets a chuckle out of the audiences that I speak with and individual with warfighters that I talk to, because literally that is the joke that never runs out of laughs. I think that we think along the terms of linear change. We think along the terms of things like linear risk management framework, linear certification processes, and doing those faster does not make us agile, it just makes us tired, right? So what we're getting after in a lot of ways is looking at how we can actually deploy automation across agile processes. How can we leverage not just, moving a PDF through email, but how can we actually develop and deploy processes that where it makes sense, we automate them and a person doesn't need to be involved, as opposed to where do we need to have a human involved doing QA and QC, and then we can get after that change much more rapidly.
Do you have a sense yet of how much of that change that you want to drive in this particular pillar is going to be cultural versus policy and procedure?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think everything is cultural. It does start with policy, and we do have to get after it from a perspective of, all right, everybody, we're going to do things differently now. It also comes with a layer of training that's necessary, and we'll talk a little bit about that in one of the other pillars. But it does come with a cultural mindset. So if the department is always accustomed to throwing more people at a problem, we're never going to get to the place where automation is actually embraced and then deployed. So it's a multi-pronged challenge to really shift hearts and minds and leverage the great talent in the people that we have. Secretary Hegseth talks about how policy does not equal transformation, people do. And so training people, getting them to understand why it's better to do things a different way is really where a lot of that mindset shift needs to come from.
We have about a minute left in this part of our conversation. Kirsten, what do you need and what do you have platform-wise to build on to deliver those agile capabilities in your view?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we're getting after. So you'll be hearing, the public will be hearing about a risk management framework overhaul that we're doing, which will make it a lot easier to do business with the Department of War. And that includes ATO processes and things like that. I think the other thing too that we're really taking a dramatic shift towards is more of these enterprise agreements. So we announced very recently a CETA agreement for all of the Microsoft licenses across the department. What we did is we bucketed into one blanket approval process, about $9.7 billion worth of Microsoft licensing. By the way, that is not net new spend. What that is that's driving efficiency across the way that we negotiate licenses and deploy licenses. We expect that to be a $422 million per year savings for taxpayers across the 5-year duration of this. We're going to do a lot more of that, and I think that's where people can be leaning in with us.
I'd like to talk about more of that when we come back. My conversation with Kirsten Davies continues after the break. FedGov Today will be back in just a moment.
It's really about how do you treat software? Again, using the zero trust model. Why would you inherently trust software? We brought up the model of the old days of Microsoft Patch Tuesday. You inherently trusted every patch that came out because you have to. You have to patch your operating systems. Now the conversation is completely changed, and with kind of again, is best practices the best way to call it, or is SBOM? SBOM is what we've chosen.
Welcome back to FedGov Today. My conversation continues now with Kirsten Davies, the Chief Information Officer at the Pentagon. We were talking about the Microsoft BPA that you have just agreed to. How does that compare? What does it replace what the department is already using? I think, for example, of flank speed that the Navy seems to be very happy with.
Yeah, that's right. And our Navy colleagues were part and parcel of this whole agreement with Microsoft. They've done a great job. Look, what we've done across this is we've taken kind of industry best practices, like let's have one place where we're negotiating big enterprise licenses. And we've married it and double stomped to where this is working effectively across various military services. Flank speed is a great example of that. Another example, within Army, they did a very similar engagement across all of their Salesforce engagements and combine them into one blanket purchase agreement. I think that we need to take where this is working across the military, bring it into the center and go, yeah, let's re-emphasize these areas and get after them.
Is it fair to say then that one of the messages is everything doesn't have to come from your office, that you will take innovation and you will take productivity wherever it grows and multiply it, scale it across the services?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And you know why? Because we all report to the taxpayers. So we want to make sure that the dollars are going most efficiently, most effectively, and optimized where they need to. And I think this is the way that we get after it at our size and at our scale. We have the power and the buying power, you know what I mean, to be going to these great service providers and these great solutions that have been helping us across the department. It's just like, let's just make this make more sense now.
I could do the whole rest of the conversation on acquisition, but we've got two more pillars to cover,
Okay.
Kirsten. Cybersecurity for the warfighting ecosystem. Yeah. You mentioned zero trust, but it sounded like the way you described zero trust at TechNet Cyber was as a piece, an important piece, but just a piece of the cybersecurity posture of the agency. Is that a fair take on my part?
Yeah, I think zero trust has become a bit of a hashtag. And what we need to do is we need to get beyond this whole buzzword bingo into operationalizing defense in depth. Zero trust architecture is part of that. So how we get to least privilege access from an individual into a session through applications to an actual mission execution, that is the nature of how we have to be architecting zero trust. So what we're doing at the department is getting after implementation rather than talking about this theoretical big brain strategy. How do we, like, no joke, get it deployed? Part of a broader defense in depth overhaul. So I think historically speaking, at large VLOs, very large organizations, historically we've thought about security at the perimeter, and if we're good at the perimeter, then we're good. That is no longer the truth for anyone, right? So as we're getting decision dominance, data supremacy out to the warfighters, the edge is where the data is, the edge is where the warfighters are. So how do we get defense through the layers from a cyber perspective, all the way from, yes, the network layer out to the edge, where sometimes, contested environments, disconnected environments at times. So how do we do that from a defense in depth perspective is what we're really getting after.
One of your predecessors, Kirsten, told me every warfighter is a cyber warrior, is the way that that person viewed the mission that that person was undertaking as the Pentagon CIO. How does that fit with the cybersecurity posture that you're driving at the agency?
Yeah, I think every warfighter is a digital warrior for sure. So when you think about it, we have multiple generations in the workforce today. The soldiers, sailors, guardsmen, Space Force folks, all the folks that are coming in right now are digitally native. They're accustomed to code-based, interface-ready, data everywhere at access points, anywhere, anytime data. And we're working with some of our best and brightest, leaders and flag officers who are kind of like us, more hybrid, right? We still know what 80s mixtapes were, right? So how we leverage the wisdom of our hybrid generations of leaders with the digitally native workforce that's coming in right now is actually really quite critical. So when I say every warrior is a digital warrior, everything is connected now. Every weapon system, every decision, every sensor, every way in which we interact with each other is digitally connected. And so our job from the cybersecurity perspective is to underpin that model seamlessly to create as little friction as possible where that is possible. And then where we need to have some friction, then we do create a little bit of friction. It's the same thing in industry standards as well. Like when you go to an app and you're doing your banking, you want to see that you had to have a login credential there, that you had to have multi-factor authentication. I do that when I'm banking online. It's the same. That's purposeful friction that serves a cybersecurity purpose. It could be done without that, but as a consumer, you want to know that those protections are there. We're doing the same thing across our cyber defenses. So as we're enabling and empowering these digital warriors, we need to make as much of this fully seamless as possible as we move from data and information into wisdom and discernment. How do we enable that from a digital perspective?
You've already got into some of the ideas in your fourth pillar, which is skills and partnerships.
That's right.
The word partnerships in the department is a pretty broad one. What are the partnerships that you're focused on in this pillar of your strategy, Kirsten?
A lot of them, actually. So everything outside, so think about outside the department, it's interagency, it's partnerships with the Hill, it's our Five Eyes, our partners and our allies, globally speaking. Inside the department, a seamless partnership across, ANS because of acquisition reform, INS because of the various levels of classification of data and secrecy and all of those things, to R&E where they're doing the cutting edge innovation, and then in our area with the people and the readiness, P&R as well. So you think about that across the totality of the leadership layer, but all the way into the warfighting network. We need to have these seamless partnerships that say, look, we're going to provide skills-based hiring so that we're not creating any more barriers to entry for the skills that we want to, the capabilities that we want to be bringing in, especially from the cyber perspective. We want to create apprenticeships and partnerships in that way, where we have new thinking and innovative capabilities being brought in all the time. I want to also talk about our industry partnerships. So the Deputy Secretary has instilled a new program called BOND, Business Operatives for National Defense, where we're attracting some of the best and brightest out of industry to come and just partner with us. Give us some of your best thinking in your advisory. So as we're getting after the Secretary's Arsenal of Freedom initiative, the AI Arsenal initiative, the President's Peace Through Strength vision, and we've taken that on as Peace Through Technical Strength out of my office. There's so many partnerships for us to invoke as we go through this journey of transformation.
Lots more questions I'd like to ask you, but we're out of time, so I'll have to ask you to come back, please, Kirsten. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You can read more about everything Kirsten and I talked about on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in just a moment.
What that means for the department is that we need to stop being a consumer of what industry produces and be even a follower or a fast follower of what industry typically does, and rather be an enabler and help push the envelope.
I think the promise of this generative AI, this frontier AI models, is really that it can help us understand information better, make decisions faster, and it's really about increasing the aperture of humans so that we can understand this world as it's evolving in front of us.
Innovation isn't the issue. It's
Right.
How do we speed up that acquisition process? So how can they bring a platform in place that can speed from requirements development all the way to contract closeout, managing the performances of these prime contractors out there so that it's a repeatable, data-driven decision rather than disparate.
Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, AI today and tomorrow will be the focus of the ACT-IAC AI Forum coming this Friday. Government and industry speakers will tell you what's happening now and what's possible in the future at the Carasoft Conference and Collaboration Center in Reston. You can read more about it and register at fedgovtoday.com/events. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10. The State Department CIO Kelly Fletcher's here. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Have a great week. If you want insights from agency and industry leaders on the latest topics in technology, management, workforce, defense, and acquisition, sign up for the FedGov Today podcast with me, Francis Rose. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, so you'll stay up to date on the issues that matter most to federal government leaders. Listen at fedgovtoday.com and everywhere you get your shows. Don't miss out on the conversation. Follow the podcast today.